So just a quick intro on what we're going to cover. First, we're going to start with a question that really wouldn't have come about before. What is the purpose of the office today? And what are the different approaches to hybrid or flexible working that organizations can choose from? And then we'll talk about fixed hybrid working in the part-time office, how to make it work, how to generate money out of your unused office space, how to save money, how to improve productivity at work, all of those good bits of nitty gritty that I'm sure you guys all want to hear about and why you're here. So we'll get there as quickly as we can. So, existential crisis. I hope none of you have had one. I had a brief one while I was at university. I spent too much time reading about quantum physics and string theory and went into a bit of a fudge for a few weeks. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. Kids, this stuff can be harmful. Keep away from it. But I think all of you might have had what I would describe as an office existential crisis, a distressing introspection about the purpose of the office, probably started about 3 years ago or something like that, including a deep sense of office emptiness. Well, I certainly did at the beginning of the first lockdown. I'd stepped back from the running of my successful business, and this crisis really consumed me. I wanted to see if there was a way for us to bottle the positive experience of lockdown way beyond lockdown. And it really posed a huge number of questions to me. And I'm still consumed by it today. It led to me starting a new business, which my wife still categorically has not forgiven me for. And here we are. And at the center of all of these musings was one key question. What is the purpose of an office today? I really went round the houses for a long time and then eventually settled on an answer which frankly might sound a little bit dry on the surface, but bear with me. It's to improve productivity. Whereas historically you need an office to exist as an organization, the purpose of an office today, in my mind, is to improve productivity. So how would you know if it's improving productivity? Again, quite dry. The value of the benefit that an office can bring you needs to exceed the cost of that office. And it's really easy to measure the cost of an office. It's much harder to measure the benefit of an office. So this is where we go to understanding, well, what things impact productivity in teams and which ones are impacted and influenced by office usage. So this section is sponsored by Google Bard. If any of you have had to build a presentation or a webinar before AI and since AI, I can tell you it really helps for you to make sure that some of the information and background data that you're using is accurate. So according to Bard, these are the 8 top factors impacting productivity. So if you don't agree, it's not my fault. And if you look at those things, you could say very strongly at least 6 of those are positively impacted by people coming into the office and being together in the office regularly. You could argue things like time management are also impacted positively. I would say stuff like prioritization of tasks to ensure that people aren't working on the wrong things while they're working remotely certainly is improved by that. So bring everyone into the office, get all of these benefits, but what happens if you get your office strategy wrong? Well, then that impacts staff attraction and retention. Now, anyone will tell you, if you cannot attract and retain staff, that impacts every single one of these 8 factors negatively. So this is really the summary of why it's been so difficult for business leaders to understand the correct office and working strategy in the post-pandemic world. Because if you get your office strategy wrong, you undo all the productivity gains that you're seeking to gain from having an office in the first place. It's difficult. So then we say you need an office worth leaving home for to be able to get the balance right between the productivity gains you're looking for and ensuring your staff are happy to come in. So what does that mean? When we say there are 3 things that need to be present for your office to be worth leaving home for. The first 2 are self-evident. Your facilities need to be great. You need all of the things in your office to make life and work easy. You also need a vibe, an environment, and an atmosphere that is right for your team. We are past putting people in boxes and booths in a grey office space if you want them to come into the office and thrive. But then the last thing is the thing that I think people forget about the most when they're thinking about their office It's people. You can have the best facilities with the best vibe, but if you're one of 3 people in a 30-person office, it's not going to be worth being there. You're going to wonder why you came in the first place. So that's why we have to connect working pattern strategy with office strategy. Otherwise, we're not going to get the right result. So this is where we have to really look at all of the different approaches to hybrid working from one end of the spectrum to the other. There are roughly 7 main approaches to working patterns today. If you have any of the questions about any of these definitions here, please pop them in the comments, and Richard or Curran can ping me, and I'm happy to answer that, because I don't want you to misunderstand anything that we're saying. So now, none of these commonly used approaches are without challenge. It's as simple as that. Everything today is a compromise. Now, we hear a lot about the challenges at the full-time end of the spectrum, right? Because that's where we started from pre-pandemic. It's hard to attract staff because they don't want to come in regularly. There's high office costs. You know, people don't want to commute, all of those sorts of things. There's loads and loads of information out there. But there's actually probably more challenges with the other end of the hybrid working spectrum that doesn't get the same amount of coverage. There's a huge number of issues, ranging from a loss of culture, trust issues from leaders, a disconnect between different parts of your organization that impacts cross-functional collaboration. And it's also, you know, hard to train and onboard people, which is a really important thing, because I would say the majority of people watching, including myself, like, we really benefited from having in-person leadership, coaching and training in the earlier stages of our careers. And we should really feel the responsibility to pass that on to new generations. Too much fully remote or remote first working encourages most organizations to purely hire people with experience. Or what we do with the next generation of work. There are some real challenges here. So this is what's been was going around in my head all this time ago, and led me to seek an alternative approach. And that alternative approach is what we called fixed hybrid working. It's the fastest growing approach to working patterns today. Structured hybrid, which includes fixed hybrid, has gone from about 25% usage in the US to 35% usage in the US over the last 6 months. So that is how much it's growing as an approach at the moment. Fixed hybrid working is set days in the office and set days remote, generally speaking, for your entire workforce or the majority of your workforce. So we've implemented it. I've implemented it across the 2 businesses that I'm involved in. Now, the caveat is one of those businesses has got 25 people, the other one's got 7. Now, if our experience working with other organizations and helping them to implement this has shown us that if you get any bigger than about 60 people in your team, you can implement this, but it tends to become at a tribe level. So you might have one part of your business working one fixed hybrid approach and another part of your business working a different hybrid approach on different days. What we've noticed is applying and implementing this sets a tone to the week. So both of my organizations come in on a Monday and a Thursday and some Fridays. So that means we're in the office on those days and we prioritize specific types of tasks that are better done in person, collaboratively. So on Mondays, we tend to do planning sessions, team meetings, one-to-ones and PVPs, etc. That releases all of us to focus on work that is better done on an individual basis for the Tuesday and the Wednesday. And we plan earlier on in the week what collaborative sessions we need to do, creative sessions, cross-functional sessions, etc., that we want to do on a Thursday when we know we're all going to be in again. And then Fridays, sometimes we come in, but that's generally speaking for additional training or socials. It's not like a fully blooded working day. And we've seen some very clear benefits when we compare our experience to other organizations out there. The consistent working patterns mean that people can build their lives around, they know exactly when they're in the office and they know exactly when they're going to be home. Prioritization improves because we're constantly checking in on what needs to be done. We've obviously reduced office costs, which we'll come to in a minute. And there's a clear sense of togetherness and good atmosphere. And everyone looks forward to their office days because everyone's going to be there and you can reconnect. So a major benefit of fixed hybrid working is you've got this opportunity where you're not using the office consistently on specific days of the week. And that's where the concept of the part-time office became a reality. So this is one example of a part-time office deal that has been in existence for quite a long time. We've got a load of other examples that we could provide. The new sharing occupier has just renewed their lease for Tuesdays and Wednesdays for another year, which is a great proof of concept for us because we're early stage. Now, that organizations get a huge office with loads of resources, 33 desks, private office, 2 meeting rooms, a boardroom, kitchen, living room, games area, etc., right next to Old Street Station, really nice position, and they pay £100,000 a year for that. So they're basically getting a 33-person desk at a desk rate of 250 quid per month, which is half of the going rate for flexible office space. And the original tenant has reduced their office costs by more than 50%. And so they're now getting their office space at £225 a desk per month, which is a phenomenal saving. So much so that whereas other organizations have been looking to get out of their lease, they happily extended their lease without any negotiation for a further 3 years because they were getting the best possible flexible office deal they could have. So what might your office be worth if you're interested in applying this? So the first thing to do is to root it against what flexible office space is worth in London at the moment. These are going rates for 4 specific areas. If you wanted to get information on other areas, of course, we would be very happy to provide it to you. You have to be realistic about whether your office would be considered high-end, mid-range, or low-end. If we look at that mid-range amount and imagine or consider a 20-desk office, if you had a 20-desk office that was fully available, this is the amount of revenue you would be able to generate in a 12-month period. The reason we put this up is you might have a 50-person office where you don't need half of it. Well, this is the kind of level of revenue you would be able to generate if you could cordon off one area and then move another organization in. But if you're working on a part-time office, basically for the days that you're not working, as long as you select the right days, you're basically looking at getting 50% of that. Now, again, going back to my friend Bard, Rick, I asked Google Bard, what was the average EBITDA profitability of a professional services business in London over the last few years? Came back at 12.1%. So if you're above that, congratulations, well done. But if you were at 12.1%, the equivalent amount of new sales you would need to generate in your business to get the same bottom line savings as renting out your office space for the days that you're not there is £600,000 if you're in Soho for a 20-person business. And I've achieved this in both of my organizations as of other organizations. It increased my recruitment business's EBITDA by 25% last year. It's a huge impact. And cash is king. They say top line is vanity, bottom line is sanity. I think this is a really good example of that in practice. So then, how do you make it work if you want to implement a part-time office, whether you are looking at it from the perspective of a host or you're looking at this as a perspective of somebody looking for a part-time office? Well, look, we can help with the entire process. This isn't a sales spiel. If you want to ask about how we help you with landlord permission and all that sort of stuff and the legal press, we've got all of these templates available. I'm happy to talk about it in Q&A, happy to talk about it offline as well. But this is more sort of generalized advice. The first thing is around office days. Now, there's an unfortunate acronym that has come about recently, which stands for Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. So our first rule is twats don't share. If you want an office for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, realistically, you're not going to get somebody who wants Monday and Friday. So go for it. But if you're prepared to compromise and share out the first 4 days of the week, then you have a very realistic opportunity to get another organization to share your space on the days you don't need. So Monday, Thursday, Friday for one organization and Tuesday and Wednesday for the other organization is the most common approach. You can also do that with a sharing of a Friday because a lot of organizations don't want that Friday. But there are lots of other alternatives. I believe still to date, and Richard can confirm or deny this in Q&A, I don't think we've lost a deal yet on the basis of 2 organizations not actually being able to agree on their day split. So that suggests that this is actually easier than a lot of people think. Look, the reality is Thursday in London is the most popular day. For me, that means I would say Monday and Thursday is a really good combination, and it works. I mean, Monday and Thursday really works for us, and Tuesdays and Wednesdays people seem to be adamant about that as well. So it does seem to work out really well, surprisingly well. And then there's other stuff, like in terms of how it works and the concept of it, the best template we've got out there is Airbnb. Imagine if you want to share your office space, you are an Airbnb host, but you're bringing one guest to stay for 12 months, right? And if you're looking to share a space, you're a guest for 12 months. You've got to treat the person that you're sharing a space with as an equal partner. You've got to stick to your agreement. You've got to have a clutter-free, clean desk policy, which you implement and keep clean and all those sorts of things. And you've got to provide secure storage and screens on desks and that sort of thing, so people can plug their laptops in when they come and put them away when they're done. It's really a lot simpler than people realize. People tend to have a lot of questions when they're looking to implement it, but they're always surprised by how simple the answer is and how cost effective it is as well. You really shouldn't expect to have to spend an enormous amount of money at all, hardly any money, preparing your office to be able to share it. So then the last piece before we go on to Q&A is an important question. The majority of organizations are working a specific pattern, which is probably a legacy of the end of the pandemic. And they're fearful about switching from this current working pattern to a new one, which is totally understandable, because we are awash with press enhanced stories of organizations getting this terribly wrong, or at least that's the narrative that the media like to portray, which can't always be trusted, let's be honest. And that raises stress and anxiety levels in leaders who are looking to switch. Like we've already seen previous slides, the danger of getting it wrong and the implications of getting it wrong are quite substantial. So here's a couple of solid bits of advice that can make a real difference. The first thing is, don't start by asking everyone in your team what they want. It's counterintuitive, but it's really important, because they're not going to have a consensus. And also, they don't know what they don't know. There is a better approach. And for me, as a leadership team, the first thing to do is start by defining the issues of your current strategy that you're looking to overcome. It might not be an office or a working pattern issue that you're looking to overcome. It might be a management process and systems issue that you're looking to overcome. But generally speaking, there does require a tweak to working patterns. And the solution that's right for you can be unearthed by starting with the problem that you're looking to solve. And then once you've decided what office working patterns you think might be right for your business at a leadership team, I think the next most important step is to run really well-planned trials. Now, what do I mean by that? The first thing is, if you're fully remote at the moment, you don't need to go straight into having an office. You can get a day office. We can help you trial a new working pattern over the course of a couple of weeks. A load of our providers would let you have an office space for 2 or 3 days a week for a couple of weeks to see how it works. But a well-planned trial isn't also just, right, let's all come in on a Monday and a Thursday. It's, what are we going to do on that Monday? What are we going to do on that Thursday? How are we going to maximize our experience as leaders to get what we want out of it? And how are we going to maximize the experience as team members to make them feel like this office is worth leaving home for, so that you can maximize the productivity benefits of having an office and minimize the risks of turning staff off by having an office that they're expected to come into. So hopefully that is a really helpful whistle-stop tour, fingers crossed, of everything that you need to know. We've got a load more information on our website. You can also search part-time office space on our site to get a sense of what's available. But these two tabs on our home menu will provide you with more information that you might want. So that's it from me. Hopefully that's been interesting and engaging, and we move on to the Q&A section of the webinar.
So we've got our first question coming in, and that question was, can you do a part-time office for 1 day per week? Handing over to you guys.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So the answer is yes, it is possible, and we have actually done it on occasion before, but the reality is it's not that easy to do. Why is it not that easy to do? Is because you need to get a match for the other 4 days, and frankly, companies who have an office for 4 days normally will just take it full time because that's what tends to work for them. So 1 day a week is possible, and I would say you need to be quite flexible if you're interested in that. So if you are interested in 1 day a week, you may need to flex in terms of location and really work with us to find something that works for you. And we do find companies who want to start with 1 day a week and then progress to 2 days a week. So we do understand that, and sometimes the 1 day a week it actually works well on a bit more of a short-term basis, as John was alluding to, on a bit more of a trial basis. So you see how that works for your business before maybe elongating that to 2 or 3 days a week.
Excellent. Thanks, Rich. Great. And we just have a second question that came in next. And that question is, do I need to get sign off from my landlord to share my office with another business? And how would I go about doing that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And over the last 3 years, we've spoken to many landlords and many property lawyers, and I can go on forever about that, but I won't. The truth is, you do need to ultimately get sign off from your landlord or agreement from your landlord, at least in principle, to go ahead with this. So in all of the deals that we've done and all of the communications we've had, every landlord has ultimately agreed to it, but the process behind that can vary quite significantly depending on who are the gatekeepers behind that landlord. But in the initial stage, what we normally say is if we've created what we call an agreement in principle, so that if this is not in your lease or if this is something you're worried about, you can maybe have a slightly bit less of a formal conversation with your landlord just to make sure that there is no major reason why they wouldn't agree to it. As long as that is the case, then we can go ahead and market your space and find a matching share for you. So it's best to do a little bit of due diligence in the beginning, but as long as you know, and everybody's relationship with their landlord is different. So as long as you have a pretty good idea that it would be fine, then we're happy to go ahead with that. And actually, the way that we present it and help you present it is for the landlord's benefit as well. So what I mean by that is we've created templates to make sure that every side is protected in this, and absolutely including the landlord. So this is absolutely contractually watertight, so that they're covered and everybody's covered by it as well. And ultimately, if it's presented in the right way, it can also be shown that if this is something that works for you as the current leaseholder, then you're much more likely to extend your lease, and ultimately it can be a bit of a win-win for all sides. And ultimately, most landlords in the end recognize that and tend to agree to it.
Amazing. And then a very, very topical follow-on question about a specific landlord, which is, can you share an office if you're in a WeWork?
Yeah, interesting question. I think, if I may suggest that is not only about WeWork itself, but about service office providers in general, which obviously WeWork is the most well-known example of one. And there's no reason why an office share like this can't happen within every service office provider. Legally and contractually, it is possible, but some service providers are more willing to do this than others, and some are take it on or are more willing to work with companies like us and with you for this than not. And over the last 3 years, again, we've created quite deep relations with a lot of providers in London, and we know the ones that are more able and to work in this way. So it can be done. We're doing it ourselves within a service office provider. And we act as the host, and we effectively found another tenant to join us, and we just made sure that within our agreement with the service office provider it was allowed, and that all went well, and every side seems to be happy with that. So, and there are various other office providers we work with that it does work in this way, and others are more reluctant to embrace this, I would say. In the end, this is something that we believe will be embraced by everybody because it's a concept that is very popular. The demand is very high, as we can all see, and all the press is alluding to it. And we're very much at the forefront of that conversation, including our conversation here today. And we know how it works and why, in the end, it benefits service office providers. And again, we can help you with if you're within a service office provider to make it work for you too.
Amazing. Yeah, there are always people slower to adopt these kind of things, aren't there? Right, moving on to our final question, which is, how long are commitments typically for a part-time office?
It varies, and in all the deals that we've done in terms of part-time offices, I would say they're typically a year. Use it a year as a benchmark. And the reason it's a year, because if you're finding a match and there's two companies going into the same space on different days, it's good that it's a bit more of a long-term agreement rather than just a month here or there, let's say, because it's quite a bit to set up in the first place. So normally they're a year, but there are quite a lot of caveats to that. Sometimes they're a bit less than that. And again, if we work with our different space seekers and businesses looking to find part-time offices, and if it's a bit more of a short-term agreement that you're looking for, then some providers would be more willing to do that than others. Again, it's just trying to make sure it works for both sides, including the provider and obviously yourselves as well. Again, as Jon said, he mentioning about sort of trial offices, and sometimes this works for very short term, so actually could be for 2 or 3 weeks at a time, perhaps, or even a month at a time. And the reason for that is because it doesn't, from a service office provider's point of view, it's quite very short term, and if they, for them it's also a trial as well, frankly. So that's how it works. But we found much more success when we do this for about a year or so, I would say. And I'll also just, before I finish, just come back to one point that was made throughout the presentation, which was in terms of the day split, which is an interesting point that a lot of people have asked. How do you fill a Friday, or Monday's not popular and everybody wants Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday? And it's incredible the amount of variability there is within the market and how much it changes. So just to give you an example on that, we've had one of our clients who wanted a part-time office, had to be a Monday and a Thursday, but actually when we got into the detail and understood their requirements a bit more, they showed a bit of flexibility. They're actually in on Tuesday and a Wednesday instead, and it's working brilliantly for them. And they realized that actually, because there was some reason why one of their members of staff needed to come in on a Monday, it was all very viable in the end. So a little bit of flexibility goes quite a long way. It is new, as we've said all along, is new, but generally the split works quite well. We've had various customers who like coming in on a Friday because they feel as they almost get the run of London, as they call it, on a Friday, and they're able to do more. And as anyone who goes in on Thursday know, it's especially at the moment in the hot weather, it's packed and it's not always that pleasant. So there's pros and cons of everything, and we're definitely seeing Mondays and Fridays being more popular than they were perhaps a year and a half ago. And every company, again, looking at your own culture, will differ in terms of what's right for you, and obviously we can lend our experience to advise in that regard.
If you're in a shared office on a Monday or a Friday, you're never short of meeting rooms, which I find quite helpful.
Very true. Very true.
Exactly. We're still all just trying to work it out, aren't we? But that's the benefit, right? We're doing it with lots of companies, so hopefully we can give some insight into that. Okay, that was all of our questions for today. So I guess we'll close things up. I mean, thanks so much for sending in some really great questions, everyone. This is the end of the webinar. If there are any questions you didn't want to ask publicly, feel free to contact us privately to send those in. So I'm just putting Jon and Rich's email addresses up on screen so you have them if you need. Yeah, feel free to ask them anything privately and they'll get back to you. Also, we'll send a recording of the webinar round to everyone afterwards. Please do feel free to share it with any friends, family, colleagues who might find it useful. And yeah, thanks again for joining. Have a great Friday and a weekend. And that's it from us. Goodbye.